We are going to get started in 1 minute. Okay, welcome back to the second half of Out Summit. I hope you enjoyed the lunch, or if you are watching online, I hope you got some kind of break. If you want to see our program for the day, it's on outrightinternational.org/OutSummit 2024. And we're going to move right into our next panel on advancing intersex human rights agendas locally and globally. And I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator, Kimberly Zieselman, who is an intersex woman, a lawyer, a human rights advocate, and who is currently the senior advisor for global intersex rights at Outright International. Previously, Kimberly served as senior advisor to the special envoy to advance the human rights of LGBTQI+ persons at the US State Department. She has been the executive director of Interact, Advocates for Intersex Youth. She is an official signatory to the historic Georgia Carta Principles Plus 10. She has published an award-winning memoir. She has produced a film. I'm going to stop here. Kimberly is an incredible human being and an incredible advocate. So please, Kimberly, take us away.
Thank you so much, Maria. So welcome back from lunch, everyone. I'm excited to moderate today's panel on global advancing intersex rights globally. And we have some great speakers with us today representing the global intersex movement. On screen, do we have Dennis with us yet? I don't see him yet, so we'll do him last. We have one person joining us virtually, but we have two people here on stage, including Jeff Cagandahan. Jeff is the director of Intersex Philippines. And we also have Patricia Ahumada Escobar, president of Intersexuality Chile. And on screen, hello, Dr. Wamalwa. We have Dr. Dennis Wamalwa, a Kenyan human rights commissioner, as well as a leader in the Intersex Persons Society of Kenya. So we have 3 different regions of the world represented, and that is appropriate because this is truly a global movement that is expanding as we speak. I'm going to start off talking a little bit first, if you'll allow me to just engage in a little basic intersex 101 to make sure that we're all on the same page, because I find even in the most inclusive and supportive audiences, people appreciate a little bit of background. So starting off with the definition of intersex. Intersex refers to someone like myself who's born with one or more sex characteristics that don't match up with typical binary notions of either a male or a female body. It can be apparent at birth. So if it's something like genitals, if it's genitals that don't appear, quite typical, or it can be internal and discovered later on, which was my case. It can be chromosomal patterns, or it can be internal reproductive organs. It's not as rare as many people think. It's just largely been invisible. So I often like to say the I in LGBTIQ does not stand for invisible, but sometimes it seems like it does because of the shame and the stigma that so many of us suffer from, that society puts on us, that our own families and the medical community sometimes put on us, to stay secretive and closeted and ashamed of our bodily differences. Intersex is not a gender identity, although there are some intersex people that may claim it as part of their gender identity. And it also doesn't mean that if you're intersex, you have a non-binary gender. That's another common misconception. And it certainly doesn't mean you're transgender. But an intersex person can have any sexual orientation, any gender identity, and definitely can be also of transgender experience or transgender. So it does take a little bit to kind of wrap your mind around what is intersex and why is it a part of this rainbow community. Also, I want to note that some people in our community use the term intersex and some don't. Some prefer, even though they meet the definition that I just gave you of intersex, they prefer to refer to their medical condition or simply as a person born with a difference of sex development. And as you will hear from our panelists, there are a few really key human rights issues that our community is fighting back against. The first and probably most prevalent across the world is irreversible and unnecessary surgeries done on infants and young children as a form basically of gender-based violence. These are surgeries to try to fix their bodies to meet these binary notions of either male and female, and essentially erase intersex. Lack of access to intersex-affirming care across the lifespan is a very, very common issue we all struggle with, including myself as probably one of the most connected intersex people in the United States who has access to medicine in any major city. I don't have any intersex-affirming or competent care. So let that sink in for a sec. Legal recognition. So just legal recognition, as well as self-determined gender recognition, are issues for people in some people in our community. But even just being recognized as a human being and getting that national identity card that says you have a right to education, you have a right to health care. In some places in the world, intersex people are left in limbo simply because their bodies don't look either male or female and meet the binary cultural and political norms. So focusing on the biggest issue, the surgeries that I mentioned that are non-consensual, harmful surgeries, including irreversible cosmetic surgeries performed on young babies. About 1 in 2,000 intersex babies around the world are born with a visible physical genital difference that makes them the most vulnerable to early harmful surgeries that are to quote unquote normalize their bodies. For example, when an intersex baby is born, their genitals may not appear to be what is typically expected for a boy or a girl, despite being perfectly healthy. Doctors often urge confused and often emotionally vulnerable parents to consent to these irreversible infant surgeries to normalize their baby's genitals. Sometimes parents will even aggressively seek out this medical intervention in an attempt to fix their intersex children. And this is happening in many different countries. And in some cultures, it feels more pronounced than others that, I've heard stories about, well, my baby will not be accepted by my extended family if they don't look typical. So they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart to protect their child, to protect their family. But this has, as we've seen, much evidence of harm. The intersex movement has been speaking out for over 3 decades. And so we have lots of anecdotal evidence around the physical and emotional harms as a result of medicalization. And it's not just the surgeries, it's the repeated medical exams. It's the shame and the trauma of being told that your body is wrong or that you're a freak, basically, and you need to be fixed to be accepted in society. Some of the physical manifestations can be, pain, chronic pain, nerve damage, loss of sensitivity, scarring, incontinence, and even sterilization. As well as on the emotional side, the risk of PTSD is great. There's a high level of PTSD experienced in our community. There's a documented increased risk of suicide. And of course, the risk that the sex that is quote unquote surgically assigned will not match one's gender identity. Thus, some intersex people end up also identifying as transgender because they've had to transition, so to speak, because of the wrong surgical sex assignment. So as I said, there is indeed a large and expanding global intersex rights movement with activists and intersex-led organizations in every region of the country, in every region of the world. However, less than 2% of all funding going to the global LGBTQI+ movement is going to the intersex movement to fund specific intersex work. And unfortunately, our movement continues to be woefully underfunded. There's an enormous need for resources and capacity building assistance from donors and allies in related movements as well. Intersex persons around the world routinely are facing discrimination, violence, and harmful practices based on others' fear of difference, in our case, physical bodily difference. And this thus naturally, I think, aligns us with the broader movement, the broader queer movement in many ways. But it's important to know that intersex is also very unique. Important particularly regarding the harmful surgeries that I've talked about that are done without our consent. So in some cases, we're labeled intersex, disordered, defective as something that needs to be fixed or erased as soon as we enter the world. So clearly before we even have a voice or an identity. I think it's important to note that like so many movements, the intersex movement is intersectional, particularly around the issue of these childhood surgeries, and could benefit from the additional allyship and collaboration with other related movements, including the children's rights movements, disability rights movement, reproductive rights, anti-violence movements, including anti-FGM, and even, as I said, disability rights. And over the last few years, my intersex activism has been largely focused on advancing human rights outside of the US. And I've identified the priority issues, the challenges, and the biggest needs of the activists in the various countries and regions, particularly in the global South and in Eastern Europe. Outright supports activists in various ways, including capacity building, training, research, and technical assistance related to legal advocacy. Last week, we released a new report called I Am Intersex, Global Voices for Justice. We interviewed 15 activists from 11 countries to provide a snapshot of the movement's current state while also highlighting the voices of the incredible work of the intersex activists and the organizations who are fighting daily for bodily autonomy and self-determination and the same human rights that we all deserve. So soon we will hear from these activists, some of their challenges, some of their stories, and I think I'd like to start with, well, maybe not. I think I'd like to now start with Patty. Why don't we talk about your experience as an intersex person in Chile, a little bit about your organization, and please share some of the progress that you've had in your country around medical procedures for intersex persons.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Me llamo Patti, soy presidenta de Intersexuales Chile y soy una persona que nació con hiperplasia suprarrenal congénita.
So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patty. I am the president of Intersex in Chile. I am a person with congenital adrenal hyperplasia.
Pero supe que era intersex a mis 30 años y ya tengo 36 años.
I found out I was intersex approximately 30 years old. I'm now 36.
Y bueno, comencé a ir al hospital desde los 13 años debido a que no menstruaba, mi madre no sabía qué ocurría con mi cuerpo.
So I started to go to the hospital at 13 years old. I wasn't menstruating. My mother didn't know what was going on with my body.
Y bueno, debido a eso fui sobremedicalizada sin mi consentimiento. Esa fue lo que ocurrió conmigo dentro de la parte médica.
So as a result of that, I was over medicalized. That was what happened to me in regards to the medical side.
Y eso provocó daños irreparables a los huesos de mi cuerpo.
And that led to severe damage to the bones in my body.
Y bueno, cuando descubrí que era intersexual, fue por el propósito de saber si podía ser madre, y ahí encontré en Facebook un grupo de personas con hiperplasia.
So when I discovered that I was intersex was because I wanted to find out if I could be a mother, and I found a Facebook group with other people with adrenal hyperplasia.
Y ahí me enteré que era intersexual.
And then I find out, oh, I'm intersex.
Y luego de eso conocí a Intersexuales Chile.
And after that, I met people with intersexual Chile.
Y desde el 2019 que soy parte y asumí la presidencia en el 2021.
I have been a member since 2019 and I became the president in 2021.
Y bueno, al comienzo no quería ser parte de Intersexuales Chile y finalmente ahora soy presidenta.
Well, at the beginning, I didn't want to be a member of Intersexual Chile, and now I am the president.
Y bueno, lamentablemente en Chile no se sabe lo que es la intersexualidad. Entonces, como no saben, no pueden llamarse intersex.
And unfortunately, in Chile, people don't know what intersexuality means, and because if they don't know the definition, they cannot call themselves intersex.
Y lamentablemente los médicos en Chile intentan borrar todas las operaciones o todo lo que ocurre con nosotros.
And unfortunately, the doctors in Chile try to erase everything that is related with intersex people, everything related with us.
Y nos tratan de forma muy patologizante, como malformación congénita, DSD, nos tratan de una forma muy enfermiza.
And they treat intersex people in a pathologizing way, like a malformation, like from an illness perspective.
Y lamentablemente todas las intervenciones son llamadas bajo otro nombre, entonces nunca se sabe que son realmente operaciones a personas intersex.
And unfortunately, all the medical procedures are hidden under other medical procedures, and intersex people don't know anything about those procedures.
Y los padres terminan aceptando toda intervención porque obviamente piensan que es lo mejor para sus bebés.
And at the end of the day, parents ended up accepting all the interventions because they believe that that is for the well-being of their children, their babies.
Y nosotros como Intersexuales Chile no tenemos acceso a saber cuántas personas han sido intervenidas en los hospitales de nuestro país.
And we as an intersex at Chile don't have any access to the data to determine how many people has undergone those medical procedures.
Y a pesar de que hay nuevas políticas públicas como la Circular 15, aún no se implementa en todo el país.
And despite the fact that we have a memorandum, a public memorandum, memorandum number 15, this memorandum is not implemented throughout the country.
Y bueno, es el único documento legal que existe en Chile y uno de los pocos en Latinoamérica que protege a las personas intersexuales.
And well, this is one of the few documents that we have in our region and the only document we have in Chile to protect intersex people.
Y como somos la única agrupación intersexual, tenemos la tarea de capacitar a todas las personas dentro del país.
And because we are the only intersex organization in the nation, in Chile, we have the duty to train all people in our nation in Chile.
Y bueno, Chile es un país muy largo, por lo que implica viajar distancias muy largas, eso provoca muy costoso y muchos recursos para poder viajar por el país.
And well, Chile is a very long country and distances are very large. That means that we have to travel long distances, and that means we need a lot of resources. It's very expensive.
Y lamentablemente nosotros como agrupación necesitamos satisfacer todas las necesidades del gobierno y que lamentable no lo ha hecho.
And unfortunately, as a group, we need to satisfy all the government responsibilities. Unfortunately, the Chilean government hasn't done that yet.
Que es mostrar nuestras vivencias, que la gente conozca lo que vivimos como personas intersexuales dentro de este país.
The government responsibility will be to just broadcast our life experiences, the experiences of intersex people, what we go through within the nation.
Y por eso es importante que nosotros como organización demos apoyo de calidad a las personas intersexuales, ya que lamentablemente el gobierno no lo hace.
That's why it is extremely important that in our organization we provide quality support to intersex people, because we know that the government won't do it.
Pero no todo es malo, obviamente hay un éxito dentro de nuestra organización.
But no, not everything is negative. We celebrate successes as well within our organization.
Y bueno, un trabajo intensivo de nuestros integrantes, más el trabajo que he hecho por la proteger a las infancias intersexuales.
So, well, we do an intensive work with our staff and members to protect intersex people and other communities.
Y hemos realizado charlas por todo el país, desde el norte hasta el extremo sur.
And we have been given talks in all around the country for south to north.
Y bueno, contamos con una muy fuerte alianza con el Colegio Médico, donde hemos capacitado a más de 5.000 profesionales de salud.
And we actually have a very strong alliance with the medical board in Chile, which has allowed us to provide training to 5,000 medical providers.
Y también hemos educado en escuelas, universidades, profesores. En total, desde el 2021, unas 7.000 personas.
And we have also provided education and training tools in university and different professors. And I will say it is a total of 7,000 people from the 2000s.
Okay. Y la intersexualidad es un tema muy complejo, por lo que hacemos en ferias, hacemos juegos, actividades para que la gente pueda entender.
So intersexuality is a very complex topic. So we do it and we present it in a fun way. We do activities, we do games, so attendees can understand the meaning of intersex.
Y bueno, gracias a todo este trabajo hemos recibido buenos frutos, grandes reconocimientos dentro de nuestro país.
And thanks to this work, we have received fruits of recognition in Chile.
Y obviamente esto nos motiva para que sigamos trabajando y seguir haciendo cosas para proteger a las personas intersexuales.
And of course, this is a motivation to continue working very hard and to continue do positive things for intersex people.
Y bueno, con el nuevo gobierno que existe en Chile se creó una mesa, que es la mesa LGBTIQ+ del gobierno.
And with the new government that we have in Chile, we formed a new discussion table, the LGBTI+ in Chile, with this new government.
Este fue liderado por el Ministerio de la Mujer y Equidad de Género junto a la ex primera dama Irina Caramanos.
And this table was put together thanks to the support of the former First Lady Irina Caramanos.
En donde conversamos con distintos ministerios del gobierno, con distintos activistas, distintas agrupaciones.
And we talked with different members of the government, with activists and organizations.
Y por primera vez, una comunidad intersexual pudo entrar a la Casa de Gobierno.
And it was the first time that one intersex community organization was able to enter the presidency, the government.
Entonces, dijimos todas nuestras necesidades, todo lo que queríamos, todo lo que necesitábamos.
So we were able to voice out all our needs, all our desires, everything that we needed.
Y gracias a ese trabajo, en Chile se creó la tercera política pública.
So thanks to this work in Chile, we issued the third public policy
que prohíbe las operaciones a las personas intersexuales en Chile.
that banned medical operations to intersex people in Chile.
Pero obviamente falta fiscalización, obviamente falta que se siga difundiendo esta circular en todo el país.
But of course, it's lacking supervision, diffusion to be able to fully implement it in Chile.
Esta circular se lanzó el 7 de noviembre de 2023 y fue lanzada al público en el 2024, en enero.
So this memorandum was published on November 7, 2023, but it became available to the public in January 2024.
Donde asistieron personalidades del gobierno y también fue invitado personas de UNICEF quienes estuvieron presentes en este lanzamiento de la circular.
So when this memorandum was launched, members, public officials attended, and also important people from UNICEF.
También hemos logrado escribir libros para educar a la población intersexual. Aquí los tengo para que después los puedan revisar. Esto ha sido una forma de educar a los estudiantes en Chile.
So we have also achieved the publication of some books that I have with me today that you can consult later. Those books are aimed to educate people about intersex, educate the entire community in Chile about intersex people.
Y obviamente que en el futuro queremos seguir capacitando gente, seguir educando a más personas sobre intersexualidad.
And of course, in the future, we want to continue training and educating people on intersexuality.
La única forma de conocer más personas intersexuales es educando,
Because the only way to be able to meet more intersex people is just by education, by educating them.
así ellos mismos pueden reconocer y saber, soy intersexual.
That's the way they can realize themselves, okay, I'm an intersex person.
Así pueden llegar a nuestra agrupación y podemos hacer un trabajo en conjunto.
And that way they will be able to reach out our organization and continue doing work together.
Y obviamente siempre nuestro principio, nuestro objetivo, nuestra misión es seguir protegiendo a las personas intersexuales en Chile.
And of course, our goal will always remain the same. Our objective is to protect intersex people in Chile.
Al año damos más de 100 atenciones psicológicas, por lo que queremos seguir dando más atenciones a las personas intersexuales y personas trans dentro del país.
We have provided 100 psychological services to intersex people in Chile, and we want to expand those to trans people as well in Chile.
Y obviamente necesitamos más personas que nos ayuden dentro de la agrupación. Es una agrupación muy pequeña.
But of course, we need more people that are able to help us inside the organization. Our organization, it's very small.
Pero obviamente necesitamos más recursos para poder contratar más personas y que más gente quiera trabajar con nuestra agrupación.
And of course, we need more resources, so we will be able to hire more people and more people that are really interested in working with us in our organization.
Y obviamente dar un servicio de calidad también para que las personas puedan entender lo que hacemos, lo que vivimos y como contaba Kimberly, todas las situaciones terribles que pasan las personas intersexuales.
And of course, we want to provide high quality services. We want the entire population to understand our challenges, what we go through, and be able to expand our life experiences.
Y bueno, para finalizar, agradezco la instancia de estar acá. Chile es un país muy lejos, y agradezco mucho que estén interesados en conocer qué ocurre en Chile con respecto a este tema.
And just to sum up, I just want to say that I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity today. Chile is far, far, far away. I'm extremely grateful that you're actually interested in knowing what we are doing there and you want to help.
Y bueno, traje algunos regalos para que ustedes puedan conocer la circular y sepan qué está ocurriendo en el país, así que cuando termine nos podemos encontrar y les voy a entregar la circular para que se la lleven a su casa.
And I also brought some gifts with me. So if you wish at the end, when I finish the presentation, I can give you a copy of memorandum number 15. You can take it with you, you can learn about it, and you can take it with you to your house.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Patty. I'm just incredibly impressed with how much you and the other volunteers at Intersexual Chile has done with, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot, like, what's your budget? Your budget. It's okay. I think people are going to be blown away.
Todos nos vamos a caer de cabeza.
I mean, it's incredible.
$15,000
¿Dólares?
al año.
So a year, 15,000 a year.
Okay?
No recibo,
See what I'm
no
talking about?
recibo honorarios,
It's
lamentablemente.
insane.
And we don't receive any commissions or any other type of help.
And you were talking about basically doing the work of educating health professionals in your country as mandated by the government under the, well, as guided by the government under the memorandum. Is there any chance the government would help pay you and the other volunteers to do this education? Don't choke.
Bueno, para recibir dinero del gobierno hay que tener personalidad jurídica y estar oficializado, pero estamos en proceso de eso.
Okay, well, in order to receive money from the government, we will need to be legally incorporated officially, and we're working towards that.
Yes, we are. And Outright gave a very, very small grant to help do that. And I'm glad that that's moving ahead. I just wanted to highlight that because this is just one of many examples of the incredible work that's happening on the ground across the Global South, especially with very, very, very little funding. So thank you, Patty. That was really, really great. And it gives me hope to know that you're making progress in that way. I'm not sure if Dr. Wamalwa is with us fully because I only see his name on the screen.
Hello, Kimberly.
You're
I'm
there. Hello, Dennis.
from the beginning.
All right. I just wasn't sure because we didn't see your smiling face. So, Dr. Wamalwa, you are joining us virtually from Kenya. Thank you. I know it's very late there, so thank you for joining us. We'd all love to hear more about your amazing work, your personal story, you know, a little bit of how you got into doing this intersex work as a commissioner, as well as an intersex activist. Kenya has quite a unique story on the continent around making some progress to date on behalf of particularly intersex children. And I'd love to hear more about that from you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Say hi to Jeff and the just last Bali, the presenter, and the panelists. It's good to be together as a family, as a community. I'm Dr. Dennis Wamalwa, of course, a commissioner, but now here I'm speaking as an intersex person standing in for the rights of intersex persons in Kenya and in Africa. You're aware I'm on the board of African Intersex Movement. Kimberly, you did a very wonderful introduction of what intersex is. As much as I know, we have more than over 46 variations, but you really summarized. I don't want to go into that because I know of time. What I want to say is that for being born intersex from the village, I've undergone over 39 major irreversible, what they call corrective surgeries. I was put on testosterone when I was the age of 9, and this has caused a lot of physical and emotional harms since then. One, in terms of pain, every time I go to shower, I look at the scars, I keep on crying. Right now, I'm 50 years old. It's never been easy. It's been very expensive. The other day, I was with Jeff in South Africa. I had to sneak out from a meeting to go and get some drugs. I mean, some kind of, not drugs, some kind of jelly, because I've been testosterone. I've had injection all over my body that there's nowhere they can inject anymore. So I had to get something, kind of a jelly, very expensive. Endless surgeries. I had the last surgery, it's never last. The latest was when I was a commissioner. And remember, I've walked this journey before I became a commissioner. In terms of the hormones, there's the weight gain, there's the heart palpitation, isolation in hospital when I was a child, loneliness, societal tendencies that you just mentioned has not been easy. But we thank God. They say what cannot kill you only makes you strong. How I got involved in intersex work. I first heard Kimberly, I know you know Sakala, Mbato from Zambia. I heard him over the radio talking about his story. This after high school, I was working as a lecturer. All was going well. All the surgeries I was having, no one ever told me what they were all about. My father passed on without even knowing what it was because doctors could kick me out of the room as they discussed. Then later on, I heard from James Karanja from Kenya, intersex side of Kenya. So then I joined him together to understand what it was because what they were discussing looked like what I was going through. For me, I just used to be taken to operating table like a car being taken to a mechanic. So when I joined, and thanks God, I did psychology because I attempted suicide several times at the age of 13 because I started surgeries when I was 9 years old. And I was being used like a we call it what? Like people are just testing. Doctors will come. I used to be isolated. So doctors will come to my room. I was isolated. They come, they could come in cycles. It was not easy. So how I wanted to do this when I joined the Intersex Person Society of Kenya as a psychologist, because there's a brother who saved me from committing suicide, a Christian brother, a religious brother. And I said probably counseling was the best thing. So when I joined IPIC, Intersex Person Society of Kenya, I started now offering psychosocial support to intersex persons. I wanted to make a difference for intersex persons facing in terms of policy, institutional challenges that they can't face. So currently, as a commissioner at the Kenya National Human Rights Commission, it opened new doors because now I'm at the policy level. Kenya recognizes intersex persons because in 2019, for the first time, like you just mentioned, and you have even quoted in your research, we had the first country ever in the world to put male, female, intersex. So right now, most of the documents are having male, female, intersex because they never used to be allowed into this. I'm also privileged to be a board member of African Intersex Movement because now we're moving across Africa, Kenya, and so. In terms of priorities, you just mentioned issues. To secure the legal protection for intersex individuals, Kenya came up with the Intersex Bill 2024. We started 2023, now we're into 2024, whose objective is to provide for the recognition, protection, and safeguarding of intersex persons' human rights in Kenya. To provide for equalization in terms of opportunities by saying intersex persons are not disabled. They can do anything they can do. Through affirmative action and non-discrimination for intersex persons and for connected purposes. Right now, when I go to the commission, it's hardly 2 years, I've been able through the commission and the support of the CEO, support of our chair, we've been able at least to have over 6 intersex persons recruited. In terms of sports, they say their testosterone level is high. But we are saying, you see, this is natural. You can't change that. The biggest challenges, Kimberly and my colleagues, through IPIC, Intersex Persons Implementation Coordination Committee, that was set up, which I just mentioned, we realized the report of the challenges, whereas that there's poor recognition from inadequate policies, laws, institutional and administrative processes. When an intersex person falls falls aside of the law and they are put in the police station. In Kenya, right now, what we have is male prison and female prison. Where is an intersex person supposed to be put? And that was the genesis of how we came up with this the policy, the kind of the administrative levels. Poor legal recognition and documentation. Right now, James, Kimberly, James has not been able to graduate to date because when in high school was Mary Karanja, now he's James Karanja, but because of documentation. Gloria, my colleague at the commission, every time she goes to pick a document in East Coast, wherever entities, they arrest her for impersonation because she took an ID when she was a beautiful girl. Now she's bimby because of the body changes. Human rights violations arising from lack of protection and social stigma. This is what we're saying. Inadequate social and cultural medical structures. Right now, I'm lucky when I joined the commission, my chair was like, no, if you cannot cover Dennis testosterone and it's beyond this, then no. So we are working for that. Religious beliefs, it has it that intersex persons are born out of sin and therefore are cursed. Most intersex persons do not even go to the church. As I finalize, the past successes we've had, the goal, the process, and the result. In 2019, during our National Housing Census registration, intersex persons were counted as 1,224. I was not even counted because officers who came asking, they just looked at you, they see me with a bald head, with some small beards, and they ticked. 2022, intersex persons were, as part of advocacy, and intersex person myself was appointed by the president. Of course, I had the qualifications, but now it came in terms of marginalization. And because they had counted intersex persons as the third gender. Now, 2022, we had the Children's Act law that was passed that recognized intersex persons children and they have all the rights. Kenya's Intersex Bill 2024, if it goes through legislatively, then efforts are aimed at securing the rights and protection of intersex individuals is to provide for recognition, protection, safeguarding intersex persons' human rights in the country. The goal is very simple, to advocate for the same legal recognition. So I know I have limited time. In terms of the process and results, the commission in 2018 formed a task force, which I just mentioned, and I have some books I'll show you again, like my colleague just did, that advocate for this. Census, yes. In terms of state of the report, yes, so far it's in the parliament. We're waiting. Once the parliament now reconstitutes, then we are sure we're going to make sure that it goes through. The challenge, and thanks Kimberly, in your own small way and the organization, you've been able to support us in terms of advocacy, because we need to have this go through as a law. Everything will follow. But like you said, like just my colleague just said, finances are the issue, and we're still lobbying. So finally, current and future steps towards advocates for intersex persons' rights in Kenya. The bill is expected to be debated in the parliament and signed into the law by the Kenyan president. This is expected to be discussed early, probably next year, because right now it's December and people are running helter-skelter. And the stakeholders, we're having now the church on our side. Remember the last time I talked to you, I was in Mombasa. We had Religious Council of Kenya, because of their beliefs, we want to help them understand what it is. So through public participation and through awareness creation that we are going on, we hope and pray that if we get some funds, then it's going to go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your commitment, both as an intersex individual and as a commissioner. I think Kenya is really a good example of progress for intersex folks in an area that is really difficult for the broader LGBTQ community. And the role of religion and deeply held cultural beliefs. You heard Dennis talk about intersex pregnancies and births being seen as a bad omen. And, there's a lot to tackle there. And it really goes back to storytelling, humanizing intersex people, and sharing these narratives with the right groups of people, which are going to be different in every cultural and political context, right, in every country. So now, switching to another part of the globe, let's go to Asia. Jeff, I'd love you to share some of your personal and professional experience doing this work. You have quite a story, and have been a very effective activist in the Philippines for some time now, for intersex folks and for broader marginalized communities as well. So would love to have you share.
Mabuhay. I'm Jeff Cagandahan from the Philippines, the first intersex person who was allowed to change gender marker in 2008. So I'm here in front of you to share not just my story, but the journey of many others like me who have struggled to embrace and understand themselves. So let me start by once upon a time. so I hope you don't get bored with my story, because I want you to understand the challenge and the struggles that intersex person like me have experienced. So I was born with ambiguous genitalia, and my grandmother told me that the doctor had difficulty in distinguishing what sex marker will it put in my birth certificate. So, but because my mom wants a baby girl, so I'm here. And as a child, from the very beginning, I knew there was something different about me. It wasn't something I couldn't put into words back then, but it is undeniable. As a child, I was confused, unable to understand why I look different like from other girls. Being what I am was never talked about in the family. They are very secretive about it. So if you were a child, what will you feel if they don't talk about it? So at back of my mind, I knew something is wrong about me, because it was never talked within the immediate family, my father, my relatives. So my dad loves to read book. He has a mini library in our house. So while I was browsing a medical encyclopedia back then, one word caught my attention, and it was highlighted. the word hermaphrodite. So, and the definition is an organism, plants or animal who have two sex organs. So, 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 in my mind, oh, I'm hermaphrodite because it was never talked about. So, I just presume that it was who I am. So, I remember during my fourth grade, I'm crying every night, almost every night. I'm asking God, God, of all the people in the world, why you create me like this? Of course, God cannot answer. so, so that's every day. I grew up in a very religious family, a Roman Catholic family, where every day girls need to wear skirts. And every Sunday, we go to church in a skirt and a veil. You know, the old tradition of the Roman Catholic. So I hate skirt, but I felt like it was a disguise. And no matter how I tried to fit, it was never. It really felt like something is weird. So, and I studied in a Roman Catholic school also. And I remember during my college day, first day of the college, my professor is calling us in our attendance using class card. So the class card, and then he called my name. Cagandahan Jennifer. So I stood up because that's who I am. But the professor looked confused and asked my classmates, is she really Jennifer? And of course, first day of school, no one knows me. Can you imagine that? So, so that became, and the thing is that because my surname is Cagandahan, Cagandahan means beautiful in Filipino. So it made me, like, it discriminates me more. Yeah. But because whether you like it or not, I am beautiful. Yeah, no, just kidding. No. So, like, I remember attending um, uh, a compulsory swimming class. Swimming class. Look at me. So, I cannot forget. I'm really terrified when I knew that I need to attend that. 6 months. And I roam along the mall to look for a swimsuit that will hide my body. A lot of pools. I have a mini skirt, like all of. But the thing, after swimming class, what will you do?
Take a shower.
You take a shower. And of course, I was assigned female at birth, so I need to go to the female shower room. No, a turtle had like a house, a shell. Like, if I can hide with it, I will really hide because, my female classmates, is always asking me, oh, Jen, because that's my nickname before. Jen, can you like put my soap in my back? Can you scrub my back? Oh, really, it's been really hard for me to like. I always find excuses to go out of that shower room. But luckily, yeah, I graduated in college. I passed the licensure exam for teachers. And then a family friend who owned a small university in a province in the Philippines wants to help me, even though I am not yet like already updated my name and marker. He introduced me to my co-faculty teachers as Jeff and as Mil. So that's and then and during that time, when I stumbled a book in the school, the college library, when I encountered the term congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So when I saw the definition, it fits me well. So I didn't know that at the time that it will be the key to unlocking my own understanding of myself. As I read it more, it all started to make sense. For its first time, I found a name for the experience I had lived through. I sought medical help. Yeah. I consulted an endocrinologist, a urologist, and a psychiatrist. And back then, they affirm that I'm psychologically and emotionally fit to live as a man. So I petitioned the court and asked the court, through the help of my relative, to update my name and sex marker. So in 2003, I petitioned the court to change my name and sex and gender marker, and it was granted by the lower court in 2005, January 2005. But because there's no law in the Philippines allowing to change gender marker, uh, it was elevated to the Supreme Court of the Philippines, which is the highest court in the Philippines. So in 2008, the Supreme Court of the Philippines affirmed the decision of the lower court. So now I feel much relief to live authentically and legally accepted for who I am. So that started my advocacy. When people uh, when people started contacting me, parents of intersex individuals, intersex persons, and uh, at the it became clear that my journey wasn't just about finding myself. It was about helping others find the courage to live authentically too. Yeah, soon after my case, as I told you before, many people contacted me and told me that, oh Jeff, you're brave, because I thought that I'm the only person, because all of us think that we are. Yeah, they seen my story and recognized their own. They were looking for support, for someone who understood their struggle. So I began to form a support group called Intersex Philippines. So because I our my goal during back then was to help them accept themselves, because it's hard when you want your family to understand you, but they don't want to talk about it. So that's the purpose of the informal support group that I established. So yeah. I ended the first Asian Intersex Forum in Bangkok. And then that made me realize, and because I met a lot of Asian intersex advocate activists in 2018, so I became more active in the advocacy. I learned that giving advices is not enough, because many intersex person like me want to change their name and sex marker also. But because the process is too tedious, too costly. Not all have the access to do that. So I drafted a bill, and it took me 1 year, because I'm not a lawyer. Yeah, it took me 1 year to complete. And after like I drafted it, some of my uh, friends who works in the advocacy, also LGBT advocacy, uh, I asked their help to use the term, to check the terms if it will be inclusive. Because in the Philippines also, the trans community are trying to have the legal gender recognition also. And I don't want this Cagandahan bill. The bill is called Cagandahan bill to affect the trans community. So, if enacted into law, Cagandahan bill uh, will uh, that intersex person can have easily access in changing their name and first name and gender marking through simple administrative procedure. It was filed in November 2023, just last year, in the House of Representatives. And in just 2 hour meeting, one deliberation, it passed the committee level of House of Representatives. So, yeah. And in the Senate, it was filed last March of 2024. It's still pending because of the many issues that the Senate, the Vice President, and the President are now going on in the Philippines. So, yeah. So, I think what because of the limited time, maybe I'll just many my colleagues are already told you some of the challenges we are encountering. So maybe some of the successes I can tell you. Yeah, we produce Intersex Philippine produced the IX's coffee table book because we want to because when we say intersex, people are like have blurred vision what intersex is. So we want to see we created the IX's coffee table book to show faces, to show the struggles of the many intersex people. So there are 11 stories of intersex people here and 5 parents of intersex children. So I also wrote my special gift. It's a children's book for that is like for 5 years old and up. So that at, because I believe that as early as that age, we need to teach them the understanding and the empathy that not that sex is not a binary. So yeah. So maybe Kimberly, I
Thank you,
guess
Steph. Yeah. No, thank you. That's great. And congratulations on the success you're having with your bill. I know it's not over till it's over, but it's on track, it sounds like. And I'd just love to ask a quick follow-up question, if I may, about you mentioned that the trans community is also seeking legal gender recognition. And how has it been working in coalition with the trans community and the broader LGBT community around a bill that's only addressing intersex? And that may be a loaded question, but I know you've shared with me a little bit about your goal of like hoping that this paves the way. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. As you know, the Philippines is 80% Roman Catholic and Christian. So it will be hard for the trans community. Before, the trans community wants to have collaboration with that bill. But because of the context of religion, we find it hard to really collaborate with them. Uh, uh, but we are trying, when drafting the bill, we try to be more inclusive. Yeah, yeah, so that the bill, if passed or enacted into law, it will pave way to the trans community, the legal gender recognition. And by the way, although there's a separation of the church and state in the Philippines, my my uh, like my church record was also Roman Catholic Church record was also updated. So it's a positive sign, at least for the Roman Catholic Church, that they acknowledge that intersex people exist also.
Thank you. So we are almost going to move on to audience questions. But first, I'd like to pose one last question to you all, to Dennis, Patty, and Jeff. If you had to think about one of the greatest challenges in doing your work, if you had to think one of the biggest roadblocks, and I know there are many, but is there one that you'd like to share that's been the most problematic, biggest hurdle? Do you want to start, Patty? That's what happens when you nod at me.
Pero antes de eso quería decir una cosa
Before that, I just wanted to say one other thing
que saqué en conclusión cuando habló Jeff,
that I thought of when Jeff was speaking.
que es tanto lo que sufrimos las personas intersexuales que terminamos contando nuestra historia de forma graciosa y ustedes se ríen.
That we intersex people, we suffer so much that we end up telling our stories in a funny way and we make people laugh.
Solo ocurrir. Y lo otro también de que no hay historia de la intersexualidad en el mundo. Y es por eso que nosotros, como Jeff mostró, creamos literatura para que la gente sepa que hay historia intersex.
And the other thing is that there really doesn't exist a history of intersex people in the world. And that's why we're creating our own publications like what Jeff shared with us so that people understand the history of the intersex experience.
Y es por eso que creamos literatura para niños, para que los niños sepan desde pequeños lo que es ser intersexual y las cosas que pasamos.
And that's also why we've created literature for children, so that children know from an early age what intersex is and what we experience.
Y con respecto a lo que preguntó Kimberly sobre el reto, el más grande obviamente es que somos demasiado invisibles en el mundo.
And with regard to Kimberly's question about our biggest challenge, well, the answer is obviously that we're too invisible in the world.
Entonces solamente nos queda a nosotros, las organizaciones intersexuales, mostrar que existimos y es muy difícil ya que somos organizaciones pequeñas.
And so it's up to us, intersex organizations, to tell the world that we exist. And it's very difficult because we're small organizations.
Y por último no tenemos el permiso, no sé cómo decirlo, el permiso para poder ir a los hospitales y decir no sigas operando. No tenemos ese permiso para realizar esas cosas.
And finally, we don't have the permission, if you want to call it that word permission, to go to the hospitals and to say, no, stop these operations.
Nos van a tratar de que estamos locos, porque obviamente según los médicos operar siempre va a ser lo correcto.
They would treat us like we were crazy people because doctors think that operating is always the best choice.
Es por eso, para finalizar, que es importante que cuando ustedes se vayan, comenten lo que hemos vivido, lo que vivimos, las historias para que las puedan compartir.
And that's why it's important for you all when we leave here today to share the stories that you've heard so that we can get the word out more.
Agreed.
De
Do you
acuerdo.
want to add to that before
Yeah.
we turn to audience?
So, yeah, visibility and lack of awareness.
Visibility and lack of awareness.
Yeah. Why? Because even media is focused on intersex genitals. So they don't like focus on the struggle, the challenges,
The experience.
yeah, and the lived experience of intersex people. So yeah, there are more than like 1.7% of the general population. So it's not rare, but we are invisible because we are afraid of the discrimination. Yeah, when social media like presents us with two fully functional sex organ, which is one of the biggest misconceptions of being intersex. So it's very hard to bust that myth. When every like global intersex organization are doing their best to make resources available, but still when media like present a story of intersex people that focus on the two fully functional sex organ, it's very hard for us to do that.
Agreed. So we have about 9 minutes left. Are there any questions from our friends online? Just to check, is somebody monitoring that for us?
Yes.
And okay, thank you, Alberto.
Thank you. It's a question for Chile.
Miss Chile.
So there's been a stronger response from the anti-gender movement in Chile around some political actors. And they have aimed their attacks into trans kids in the majority of cases. Is it the case also for the intersex agenda? Are you being attacked by the same groups? And if so, what are the arguments they are using? Thank you.
Bueno, sí, en este momento en Chile hay un gran ataque a las infancias trans, ¿es cierto?
It's true that at this time in Chile, there's a huge attack happening against trans kids.
En Chile se destinan algunos dineros a ciertas poblaciones vulnerables y se quería quitar ese dinero a la población trans para que no pudieran tener atención psicológica, distintas atenciones en los hospitales.
Certain vulnerable groups in Chile are losing funding, and they're trying to take away funding for trans kids as well, so that they don't have funding for psychological care, for hospital care.
Pero me pasa que lamentablemente lo que hablamos, los grupos antiderechos no saben lo que es la intersexualidad.
But the thing is that these anti-rights groups don't know what intersex is.
Entonces pasa que los grupos antiderechos no luchan en contra de nosotros, sino que los que luchan en contra de las personas intersexuales son los mismos padres de las personas intersexuales.
So the upshot of that is that the anti-rights people aren't the ones who are fighting against us intersex people, but rather it's the parents of intersex kids.
Existe una organización muy grande en Chile que es de padres que están a favor de las operaciones de sus hijos sin importar las consecuencias.
There's a huge movement in Chile right now of parents who are in favor of operations regardless of the consequences.
el cual tienen un grupo de WhatsApp muy secreto, en donde yo ingresé a escondidas y me descubrieron y me echaron.
They have a very secretive WhatsApp group, and I managed to infiltrate it, but then they found out about it, so.
Y yo envié la circular a este grupo de padres para que supieran el avance que había en Chile y me dijeron, no, nosotros decidimos por nuestros hijos.
I sent this memorandum, the public memorandum, to the parents, to this group of parents, so that they could know what was happening in Chile. But they said, no, we're the ones who make the decisions.
Y
Yeah.
lamentablemente están guiados por los médicos en Chile y bueno, en todo el mundo, entonces finalmente son los padres los que dicen que si tú operas, dejas de ser intersexual, esa información se sigue corriendo y creen que eso es lo correcto.
And unfortunately, they receive guidance from the doctors, and the parents say, well, if you receive this operation, then you'll no longer be intersex, and they're still functioning based on that mistaken information.
Ya que al estar la sigla la I, piensan que por ser intersexual somos todos homosexuales.
And because there's the I in the acronym, they think that because we're intersex, we're all homosexual as well.
Y por nacer intersexual, supuestamente serías gay, cosa que no es así.
And that just because we're intersex, we're automatically gay, and that's not true.
So.
I can relate to that so much, including the infiltrating a Facebook group at one point in my career. So, Patty, I love to see it. Yes, everything Patty just said, really, I think everything you just said, also for the United States. There's a strong parental rights group on this particular issue and funded by doctors. Surprise, surprise. So, any other questions from the audience here in the room? Oh, Sam, Samantha.
So one, we've talked about it a little bit in this session about how it's also about children's rights. And I want to kind of dig into a little bit more like this intersection of intersex issues and transgender issues. On the opposition on both sides really is, about protecting the children. But in the case of like the intersex
So hypocritical.
children,
Yeah.
it's like the parents get to decide,
Yeah.
right? And they know best.
Right.
And then on the other side, for like transgender issues, we're really advocating that like it's the kids who sort of determine themselves, right, with support from the parents who know best how to make medical decisions for
In
their
consult
child,
with their doctors.
and without like any governmental interference.
Yep.
Where
It's
where are like the heads of intersex activists and leaders meeting with transgender activists and leaders? What's being discussed? Like, what are the roadblocks and like where are like the paths forward? What do you see?
Can I take this? Yeah. You just asked the biggest question I have, and one of my frustrations with our movements. Yeah, they're diametrically opposed. I mean, you even heard on the earlier panel today discussion around gender affirming care for trans folks, and I was at the Victory Institute conference this weekend. Same thing. It's a narrative that we're hearing all the time from the trans movement around these decisions should be made between parents and doctors, and usually we're talking adolescents, so there's some ability to weigh in, obviously, about the care that they need and that they want, and that the government should stay out of it. But as you pointed out, it's just the opposite for intersex children who don't have a voice. And what's even worse is that I think about 24, maybe up to 28 now, but at least 24 state laws here in the United States that have passed banning, or making it very difficult to do gender affirming care for trans adolescents have explicit exceptions for intersex children written right into the law. So warning to Patty and folks in Chile, we used to be flying under the radar here as an intersex community in the United States. And we've done some awareness raising, which is great, but it also means that the other side starts to become aware of our issues and our non-binary bodies, and this is a disordered population that isn't meeting our societal heteronormative norms of what, binary norms of what a male and what a female should look like. And so let's make sure we protect the urologists and the other surgeons that are doing these surgeries in this legislation so that it doesn't impact them from doing their good work. I mean, that's essentially what's happening here. So just as a cautionary tale, they will catch on and understand. So we'll talk. But yeah, it's very difficult. To your really pointed question about are the communities talking? Yes and no. I mean, I can't speak for everyone. I know I used to run Interact here in the United States, and I know they're working, at least they seem to be working when I see their social media, very much hand in hand with the trans community as siblings. And this may not be a popular thing to say, but I'll say it. I think the intersex community is really trying to do that, and I don't see it reciprocated. And if you really look at our statistics, although we're much more invisible, we're actually statistically more prevalent on this earth. So it's an issue of visibility, one of the biggest challenges we have, and an issue of having platforms, and frankly, an issue of funding. We don't have celebrities talking about how they're intersex, right? So we're going to get there. But I think that's one of the problems in trying to walk that fine line. It's all about bodily autonomy. And that's what we should be bonding over. That's what we should be connecting on, including women's rights, right? We should all be fighting for bodily autonomy. I don't think it's a healthcare issue, although that is one of the arguments a lot of people are making. It's a bodily autonomy issue. And I think we need to frame it more specifically around that personally. So I think that is it for our time, but thank you for the great questions. Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Chef. I miss you, man.
Bye. Time to go to sleep. Night-night.
You should come to Kenya, Bwana.
Night-night, Dennis.
Okay, thank you, good people.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for that, both very interesting and enlightening panel, and also for being so perfect on time. We are now going to get a 15-minute break. And so please be back in the room. Well, I'm going to ask you to be back at 12 minutes past the hour so we can get started at 3:15 sharp. So enjoy. There are so many forms of abuse and discrimination that LGBTIQ people face around the world. Corrective rape, killings of trans people, arbitrary arrests and mass detention, torture, so-called conversion